Awesome.
More questions anymore? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for
Have
lunch. And thank you.
lunch.
Fantastic. Tacos are always a good choice. All right, so today's topic, our creative offer mastermind. It is supposed to be mastermind style. So this is meant to be conversational, jump in, talk whenever you have a point or a question or a thought. Everyone on Zoom, same thing. We want your input. We want you to chit chat. We've got Misty forehand on, so hopefully she'll be very vocal for us. Everyone on Zoom, look at her laugh. If you cannot hear, send a message or text me, either one. I've got my phone. So I know the audio can sometimes go in and out. James Tan is running a little bit late, but he is going to be here. I asked for him to be here to talk about the legality of adding in some of the more creative things that we've seen. So we'll kind of get into that. He'll be here in just a little bit. He's running about 30 minutes late, so about 10 more minutes. So I just kind of wanted to start off with kind of really a question or a couple questions as we kind of get started here. Raise your hand if you've lost on a multiple offer situation recently. Okay, a handful of us. Do you feel like you had a creative offer or a strong offer? Yeah. Okay. Did you ask the listing agent, what won? And was it anything crazy?
$100,000 over on a $500,000 show.
Okay.
60,000
So
over.
20% over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cash.
Yep. Yes. Cash is an all. I mean.
Repairs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Same. I had a 20.
Closed in 8 days.
Yeah. 20% over. Like a 2-day option, a full appraisal waiver. I mean, all the things.
Quickest title to get it done, we'll be at the closing date.
Right. Okay. So has anyone heard of any crazy or creative things that have been offered recently on listings or from buyers? No option. Okay. What else?
$5,000 option fee.
Oh, yeah.
So high options. Yeah.
Oh, high earnest too.
Yes. Yes.
Really high.
Yeah. Who is still doing like 1% earnest on your offers or anything like that?
Nope.
No. Yeah. My average right now is 3% at least on earnest.
Did y'all read Steve Brown, the Dallas Morning News guy that wrote? I have it on my phone. My mom sends it to me. She's my business partner. And this is in Dallas. They had $400,000 in the option period.
What?
I'll pull it up some of the stuff that they had, but I have another agent that's a friend of mine who's with another broker down in Preston Hollow. They're doing $500,000 earnest money.
Earnest money.
Yeah. $10,000 option. 1 day, 2 days. I mean, these are $1 million houses, but I mean, they're getting to the point that I'm seeing on some of them. I'm buying this house. Bottom line. So if they're willing to risk the $400,000 in the option fee, then they're moving forward, or they're going to lose the $400,000. So obviously they're saying, "Hey, we're buying this house." And what's the seller going to say? $3,000 option fee or $100,000?
Right.
And I will argue that offering a higher option fee is more advantageous to the seller than no option. Reason being, with a no option period, there's still plenty of ways for a buyer to opt out, and at that point, it doesn't cost them anything. Whereas if you put up $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 an option fee, it's exactly what Jeff's saying. That is the clearest way I think a buyer can say, we're not opting out. Literally, we have to get struck by lightning to not purchase your home.
That's right.
Every intention we have is to purchase your home. And if we don't, we're paying your mortgage for the next 3 months.
Right.
Is that worth taking a risk on us over this all cash offer on the finance offer?
Absolutely.
I think it's one of the only ways I know how to combat that.
Right. Because even offering no option, I mean, if there's an HOA, you've still got a number of days with HOA. I mean, there's so many other ways that you can get out of it. And smart listing agents know that. I mean, I know that when I have an offer come through, I'm like, oh, you still have 31 other ways to get out of this contract. Doesn't impress me much. So, whereas, again, exactly. The higher option, same, I'm usually working a higher option versus an even higher earnest. So like I said, earnest money for me is about 3%. But if I have a buyer that is, again, this is their 7th offer, we're getting this house no matter what, then I'm saying, let's jack up the option amount. So that's definitely, I think option and earnest are two of the ones that I think are being played with the most. What else are you kind of seeing?
I saw private remarks the other night will not accept any offer without a complimentary 90-day lease back.
Yes.
That is
Seen that.
3 months. rent-free.
Yeah. Yes.
And my
Yeah.
buyers walk right out.
Yeah.
The lenders, will lenders go 90 days? What the?
think
I don't know
90
if they'll
is
go
the
back.
max.
I thought it was 60 was the
Okay,
max.
I thought it was
60.
I had 60
Okay.
the other one.
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful on how you position that.
Well, and I mean, I think it's important to know too that sellers are basically being told by a lot of agents, like, you can ask for whatever you want in this market. So I think you have to know that some sellers have that expectation that they're going to get whatever they ask for. And if you're on the buyer side, your job is to still make sure that if your client wants that house, it's to get the house for them. But, we still have to make sure that we're doing our job and they're being taken care of and not being taken advantage of. So I think that's kind of
I saw one with
fine
no
line.
repairs. And why are
Yes.
you gonna do an inspection,
right.
with no repairs, short option, no repairs? And I told my clients, you can't, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, again, you owe that to your client to make sure that they understand the ramifications of going no option or no repairs or as is, or, whatever that may be.
And get that in writing as a real estate agent to your client.
Absolutely.
They know.
CYA.
Yeah, that's right. Cover your ass 100%.
Yep. Yeah. So that's a good one. I mean, just in
Right,
general.
There are gonna be so many lawsuits, 6 months, 12 months from now. My agent didn't tell me that we should have gotten this inspected. My agent said that we should waive all contingencies. My agent advised us to pay $100,000 over. My agent advised me to guarantee any difference in sales price and appraised price. And if you can't show that you didn't do those things, you'll be in trouble.
I mean, I get it to the point that says how minute in the conversation we are, but send them an email. You are not requesting foundation inspections.
Right.
I need a response.
Yes.
Jeff, I am not requesting foundation inspections. You are not requesting to have a hydrostatic test. I do not, because what's gonna happen 7 months down the road, you get to buy this house in November, and then August is gonna come around, and it's gonna totally dry up all the grass and soil around, and your foundation's gonna move, and they're gonna go, well, I didn't get my foundation's problems out.
Right.
But they don't understand that the house is always susceptible and staying in its condition as long as you take care of it, and the weather and everything else around it's good.
Right.
So get everything you can in writing.
Yeah. I think that's good. I always do, per our phone conversation, just wanted to follow up and confirm,
That's right.
blah, 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 blah. Is that correct?
Especially when you're doing, huge.
Crazy things.
Crazy things.
Yeah. Let's talk about, so I've seen several in the MLS recently that, in private markets will say, do not submit an offer over list price without an appraisal waiver.
That is.
So
right.
one, can a listing agent really tell you that?
They're all saying.
I mean, they're all saying it, but do you really, no, they can't. But how are you handling that with your buyers? How are you explaining their appraisal waiver?
Well, telling them what they need to bring to the table and everything else and financially, but I've also seen where they have to have seen the house. Like they're also putting that in remarks, but people have to see them.
Right.
Your clients have to see them.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah, explaining the appraisal account.
Yes.
Because I have a client that wanted to be cashed. She said, I'm not getting it because I'm cash. I said, people aren't looking whether it's cash or appraisal waiver. They're looking for bottom dollar. Bottom dollar
Right.
is the only thing that.
Yeah. I mean, cash with a fast close or a conventional with an appraisal waiver that's $10,000 more, and they don't necessarily need a fast close.
Right.
I mean, that conventional offer can still beat that cash offer, just like you lost another cash offer. I mean, that can still happen. So I think it's important to know that even with financing offers, you can still write a really strong, really creative offer.
And make the phone call.
Absolutely.
This is how I decipher offers, who I tell my clients to work for, is how well you fill out your contracts. If you partially fill out a offer and you don't put on the broker side my information,
Drives me crazy.
then that's who I have to deal with on the other side of the table.
Lazy.
And if I get 30 offers, guess who's gonna go out automatically? The fishing one. Because they're fishing, they're writing so many offers, they don't have time to fill it out, or they're just lazy and they want somebody else to do the work.
And also have your lender call the agent.
Yep.
The agent may not pick up, but it also shows that your client's qualified and everything else and.
But you should call it
And-
as a
Oh, I
buyer.
do.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
Don't
absolutely.
just send the email and expect them to have it. Get a response back from them that they know that hey, it's been received.
Right.
Call them and follow them up. What do I need to know more about your client before we make this offer? We're getting ready to write it. Do they need to have a lease back? Have that
Right.
conversation.
Build that
with the-
rapport.
Yeah, with that other agent, because they might say, I like this person. This must be somebody I want to work with. And this other person saying, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Well, I don't want to work with Jeff.
And
Speaking of-
Establish the
and a tip
relationship.
For listing agents, you can leave that information on your voicemail. At a listing, we got 35 calls in an hour. I tried to answer all that I could, but they were all asking the same question, so I just changed my voicemail for the next 2 days. Hey, this is Hunter Webb and Keller Williams, calling up the home at 3555 Pathfinder. Let you know we have received offers. We have a deadline set at Sunday. Here's what we're looking for. So I answered the most obvious questions. Make it easy on the other side. We gotta work together.
I've also seen listing agents do that.
Yeah.
Upload basically a document to transaction desk that lists all that information
Yes.
too. And that's one of my other tips is for an offer is I had one accepted recently, and it was down to 2 or 3 of us out of I think 15 offers. And she said you had every bit of information submitted. You pulled everything off the transaction desk. You had everything filled out completely. I wasn't waiting on seller's disclosure. I didn't need, they had a previous inspection that was done within the past 6 months. Like I wasn't waiting for that initial, just like you submitted every single thing. And so I knew you'd get through the transaction. So I think that's another one too. Check private remarks and check transaction desk. If you can just, like I said, submit every single document that they're going to need, it just checks one more box for them thinking, okay, they're going to be really easy to work with. They're on top of their
Put
game.
it in order on one PDF.
Oh,
And
I'm opposite as a listing agent.
Yeah, I go separate.
I like separate PDFs.
Well, you're doing it because you got to upload it into Command.
Right. That's-
Oh, no, either way. I mean, even if it's one document, I just upload it 4 times in Command if someone sends it to me that way, but
But when
I prefer
but when
separate.
I get it, I have to send it to my client. They don't know which document to start with first. And so if I send it to my
I
client-
reorder them when I send it.
I know, but you'll have 1 to 4 chances. Residential, they don't know what all that stuff means.
You can rename it.
Send it one PDF.
Send it out there. Yeah, you go to
Send it
my-
however you
go
want.
to my-
Send it however you want, however you're comfortable and however your clients are comfortable. I think that's a personal
That's
thing.
experience.
One email.
Oh, come on.
Here, I don't know whether you want to.
Let me catch my eyeballs as they roll out of my head, Jeff. Come on.
One PDF or 5 PDFs, you
Jeez.
can pay that for 1 email. If you're gonna do
Yeah.
5
Oh, yeah.
PDFs, it better not be an email with 1 to 4, and then another email. with
Oh, my
something.
God.
Or I forgot
Oh.
this.
Because
No
I
way
am not
he's
gonna
gonna
go
look
to my
at that.
inbox and find your 9 emails with 9 documents. Get it all in one, and if you do the separate PDF, write out in the email exactly what is in there. If you do 1 PDF, it should say there is 1 PDF containing the following document. Make it easy to the point where they don't even have to open that PDF. We have a summary of our offer.
Yes,
So
that's
you can
key.
just in the email without opening it, I know exactly what you sent me.
So in that summary, so I send a summary too in my email. I send separate attachments and a bullet point of what my offer looks like. What do you, Hunter, I just am curious, what do you advise agents to include in those bullet points of their offer?
We have offer price, financing amount, financing type, closing date, any seller contributions, who's paying for title, title company.
All the highlights.
Option
Yeah.
period.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I'd love it if we could somehow like create a 1-page form. That like we.
I think that's a great
all
idea. You should definitely do
1-page
that.
form, And then the winning offer, then fills everything out inside.
Not asking for a home warranty.
Since we don't have that, I have a
Yeah.
basic version I've made for my offers that here's
Yep.
on 1 page, all the main highlights.
Right. I think that's really, again, it's helpful. And when I've submitted and talked to, I submit and I usually wait about 5 minutes and I call the listing agent. Hey, I know you're probably inundated with emails because you have a fantastic listing. I just want to follow up and make sure that you received mine. I'm sure you're super busy. It came through. Just as a quick reference, I always include the highlights. So as you're busy looking through, at least mine will be easy to look at for you. Just follow up and call. That starts that conversation. They're like, oh yeah, I did get it. Yada, yada.
Make sure if you're doing a lender, make sure the pre-approval is attached.
Oh
yeah.
God,
Email,
yes.
Because I don't like to get, it's personal, I'm a personal
Yes.
person. I don't like to get another separate email that I have to find out, because then I have to figure out who the name is. If I have multiple
Right.
offers,
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
payment Goes and all that stuff.
Make it easy.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep. So now that James is here, I kind of want to talk about some of the more creative things that people have done. So I've heard, stories, again, we all have friends that are agents. I've had, heard of someone including a year of cleaning for the seller when they move into their new property, like every other week, a year of pizza. I mean, like all kinds of crazy things. Sports tickets. Yeah. Ranger tickets. I heard of that one they were like season tickets, weren't they? Yeah. So, I mean, people are starting to get, and I personally had a listing that the buyer ended up, she owned a spa in Forney and had an Airbnb in Tulum. So my client actually got free spa services, and he did get a 4-night stay in her Airbnb in Tulum, and he took full advantage of both. That for us, between buyer's agent, listing agent, when she sent that over, I said, please don't put that in the contract. I don't want that associated. I don't want that, you know, if they want to work that out after closing, they can work that out. But I was interested, you know, James, on some of those where things get more creative, what's the best way to handle that as a buyer's agent? If you have someone that, you know, maybe can do something like that.
Usually that's just like you say, you do it outside of closing, or you can do an amendment, but don't turn the amendment in.
To title?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't turn anything in.
Why would that be?
Because you really don't want the lender to know anything about it, just like between the buyer and the seller. It's really made outside the transaction.
Okay.
But there's no other forms that we have other than, so that's what I would use. But if they want to make an agreement amongst themselves or have the buyer who's offering these products, just type up an agreement with the buyer and the seller to sign, and then they just honor it amongst themselves.
Right.
Don't ever promise your client anything that you cannot enforce.
Right. An amendment doesn't even necessarily make it enforceable, does it?
That's between him
Right.
and the other party. That's your client and the buyer. And if the client says, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have it on Christmas. Oh, no, that's the only time I want it. That's now when you get some problems.
Right.
So, but if they're both reasonable and they can work it out amongst themselves and leave the realtors out of it, that's a bonus between them.
Both were also offered to me, and I did not take advantage of either because I was like, oh no, I don't think I legally
But if you
can.
put it on admitting, aren't you titled as a representation that you're still part of that deal?
No, because you remember realtors are not part of the contract. We're not principals to that transaction. They just asked me for a form and I gave them a form. I'm not the one that's liable to provide him with free spa days. I'm not the one that's liable to provide him.
Right, but do you set a DocuSign or do you have them do it separately?
I would try and keep as far of an arm's length distance as possible.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
So outside.
Yeah.
Because if I send a DocuSign, well, my real estate.
Hey, James, sorry, pause. They're having trouble hearing. Is there a possibility you could move to the front?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I can only walk so far. I mean, I really could walk back there, but I'd be standing in the middle of everyone.
You have the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a way to do two or not, but you could sit right there. And I think because they're not having an issue hearing them that far back. So I think if you're up here in the front, then we're probably good.
Maybe I'm not speaking loud enough.
I don't know how to.
But I keep an arm's length distance as much as possible from that. If the buyer wants to create a form, you can review it with your seller. And if your seller says that's good, you just tell your seller, this is between you. This is between you and the buyer. We have nothing to do with this. It is not part of the real estate transaction, even though you may deem it to be so. We're going to keep it separate. So it's between you and your buyer. If there's an issue with it, it's going to be between you and your buyer.
So you can really take those kinds of things with a grain of salt as a listing agent, because it may or may not actually come to fruition for your client.
I wouldn't promise your client anything.
Right.
It's just, hey, I would assume that they would do it, but I can't guarantee it. That's going to be between you and your attorney and that client and their attorneys if something should go
This is
wrong.
what they're saying.
Right.
Just relay that information.
Right.
So let me ask you this question. So that sometimes the closing, I don't know what the loans are, it could be only FHA, which I don't ever see anyone. But they'll say,
Experience.
have you received any other compensation or any other financial amounts from the seller outside of this contract?
Oh, I thought it was from the lender.
It's the buyer, it's the lender, the buyer.
Right.
Right, but okay, so the buyer's providing that instead of receiving it. Okay, so that makes sense.
It's kickbacks from lenders is what that form is for.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one between buyers and sellers.
But it's not specifically for the lender. It's not stated.
It is.
Which one?
There's a form that says you haven't received anything out of the transaction from your lender.
You don't want to incent the buyer to buy the property because they have that straw buyers. I don't know if you remember those
Yep,
straw buyers.
yep.
Hey, we're going to give you $5,000
Okay.
to sign this paperwork.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more, but from the seller, it's a little different. But from the buyers, you can't entice that buyer to buy it.
I'll have to go back and look at the title because I don't think it says from lender. It just says any financial given
I know that
outside of the contract, period. There's no lender or seller, buyer, or.
I know the ones I just closed. When title went over it, she specifically said from your lender.
Okay, and it could be that they're not just putting lender on there.
Yeah.
It's usually from a buyer's lender because the buyer doesn't want the buyer enticed to doing something that compensated because he's signing the paperwork. Those are the straw buyers that we had back into 2008 markets. They didn't know what they were signing. They were just given $2,500 to go sign the documents. So they went and signed it. Got $2,500. It's a straw buyer.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that clears up, for me at least, the question of how do you write in some of those creative things. But I do think that, again, some of those items like house cleaning, Rangers tickets, I mean, it's insanity. But if you have a client that can offer that type of thing, it doesn't hurt. You just have to make sure that you do it in an ethical way for your client to make sure that they understand the ramifications and possibilities from it.
Wow.
Yeah. Has anyone else heard of any of those going on? Oh gosh, I've had like 3 or 4. Maybe I just get the crazies. So that one that closed that my client did there, that was Cedar Creek Lake.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I had represented the seller, and the buyer happened to be, like I said, a salon owner in Forney. So, and they became friends after the transaction. I think she went and stayed with him for a little while in Tulum. I want like more than an arm's length distance from us. Oh no. No. There's no interest, I don't think so. Okay, what else do we have? Like what are some other ways that you can write? Go ahead.
I was just reading an article about an agent in Fort Worth is writing, when he does offers, he's doing best bid clauses that we offer. So where they make an offer, but they also say, if we're not the highest bid, we will beat whatever the highest bid is by 1 or 2%.
Do you know what that is? It's an escalation clause, and they are not allowed in Texas, correct, James?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I've seen some escalation clauses.
Mariana.
A little bit of a contingency. We're gonna offer you 500,000, but we're gonna do an escalation clause to 550. To me, that's a 550 offer.
Right.
I mean, I would tell my, it's stupid, because I had a guy in California, I had my realtor in California, said, oh, I can't believe you people in Texas don't do escalation clauses. Well, no, it's because what happens when you get 2 escalation clauses? What's the sales price?
Whatever you want.
Infinity.
Yeah.
Is there such a number as infinity? Prove it to me on the number line. I don't know. Do you have that much money, Jeff? You have infinity? In your bank
Jeff does.
account?
Jeff does.
But the point is that's not really what California allows is they allow an escalation clause up to X amount of dollars. And so that's really not an escalation clause. I prefer that if you have a client that comes from another, like in Colorado or another place where they have 1 bids on escalation clauses, I bet you 10 to 1, they have up to a maximum of something.
Right.
And if they want to bid, 500, but yet their max is 550, why are you bidding 500? I would just go all in. If you don't get it at 550, well, then let's go look for another house.
And one of the things I told my client not too long ago, we had a multiple offer deal, put an offer in it, and they withdrew it. They didn't feel comfortable with the offer. And I asked them why, and they said, well, when we had a discussion, you told me there was going to be multiple offers on this house. I said, yeah. And it was way over list price. I said, yeah. And you also told me don't look at the list price. What is it worth to you? What's this property worth to you? I tell them, throw all the numbers out there. If you're paying cash, what is this house worth to you? What would you pay for this house? And they said, I'd pay, let's throw a number, $400,000. I said, great. That is what the offer is going to be. Because if you lose this offer, you need to be good with yourself, knowing that I did everything that I thought this house was going to be worth into I was willing to pay for it. Because something's only worth what someone's willing to pay. And so they said, okay, well, when they wrote the offer for $400,000, I said, oh, I really don't want to pay $400,000, so let's withdraw the deal. That's fine. It's going to sell for more than $400,000 probably, because somebody else is going to come in there and go, what's the difference? It's probably going to sell for like $401, $325, some weird number that's $1,000 more than the other. But you got to go into these multiple offer deals going, I need your best and final offer. What is the max that you're willing to do? If we're putting an option period in there, what I call is called locking it up. Give your very best that you can give out there, lock it up, If you have a 3-day option period, then you can go back and do your due diligence and deal with your emotions, which you just did, and then work out if there's something major with the house. Because you only get really one shot if you even get the one shot. Today's market.
Right.
Right, yeah, it's,
And that's what you gotta
You
do,
don't
is
get
you
to
gotta
negotiate.
educate your buyers. I had a buyer come and go, Jeff, I want updated 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage for $275,000. I said, here's Donna Lebo.
Hey.
I'm using you as an example. I can't work with that person. I want to, and I want to help them out. I want to get it, but I'm in a 400,000 square foot warehouse with one shelf of inventory. And that's what we're all competing against. And that's the creative of the mastermind. I have a mastermind with Donna. We just had one this morning and we have one weekly. We're always trying to figure out what's the next person doing? And we're all having this conversation. And there's a lot of creativity out there. So if anybody has any creative ideas, post that on the solutions page. Share the knowledge, because the likelihood that I'm going to have a transaction with you guys on the other side is going to be very, very slim. Donna, how long have I known you?
13 years.
And how many transactions have we got?
Zero.
Yeah. James?
Long time.
I know, but
I don't think we've done
I know, but it's you rarely will have a transaction with the people that you, for whatever reason. Now, some will, in the same neighborhoods and stuff like that. But you gotta give your clients, especially your buyers, as much expectation of what they're going into before you get there, or you're just gonna be doing offers and offers and offers and offers.
and I agree with what you said. I have a client, same thing. We look at list price. I do comps and say, this is where I think it may, and I always give a range, where it may appraise. Again, I'm not an appraiser, I can't guarantee, but based on the comps, and I send them the comps and say, this is where I think, how much are you willing to pay in that range or above it to get this house? Knowing that if you go above it, again, you're going to be paying that cash difference. And I always say, go off the cash difference on the lowest portion of my range. And I tell them, you're going to get one offer. This is not, the days of negotiation are gone. So we have to come out with our strongest, best. You're not going to get a chance to go back and say, oh, yeah, they want me $5,000 up. I'll go $2,500 up. We're done with that game right now. So I think that's important to educate your clients, let them know they're not going to go back and forth. This is just to submit once, and you're either going to get it or you're not. And same thing, you may walk during that option period. Houses are coming back on the market all the time. And it's because people are locking the house down and then deciding, do I really want it? And unfortunately, it's not fun for the listing agent. It's not fun for the people being pulled back and forth of they lose the house and they're offered it a second time, but that's the nature of the beast right now. And you have to know that, and you have to tell your clients that, otherwise their emotions are going to get out of control and you're going to suddenly be babysitting. So.
One of the things that I did this weekend, I had an out-of-town buyer. There were 8 houses they wanted to look at last week. And I said, let me wait until Thursday to see what's left.
Right.
And of course, 5 of them went under contract and only 3 of them. So they flew up to see 3 houses because nothing else was coming on the market. And so they liked 2 of the 3 houses. And so I told them it's not a comparable value market. I want you to understand that the market is not driven by comps right now. It's driven by your desire to buy this house.
Yes.
And that's the bottom line.
And the competition's desire to buy the
Yeah,
house.
and I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of Californians are coming to this market. You know what Californians are used to? Overpaying. We're used to Texas, where, hey, God dang, if I got my pay $5,000 more, I can pull my hair out. Californians aren't used to 5,000. They're used to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and more. And that's who you're competing with in this market. My guys are from Cleveland, but they're originally from Florida. And so they understand what was going on. And one of the things that I do is I pull 6 months comps and I pull 60-day comps. And I compare them to what's going on. I mean, it was going 500 to 560. Now there were only 2 or 3 comps, but there were average, again, approximate square footage, 560 versus 6 months showing 500. And I said, this is what's happening in the marketplace. You're $60,000 above.
Just wait 30 days. We'll finally have the appraisers back on their side.
Well, again,
Well,
like I said, there were
not
only
if
2 or
prices
3
keep
comps.
increasing in that 30 days. Appraisals look backwards. It's looking at past history.
Yeah,
So
but it's
appraisals are
been
never
crazy these last 30 days.
Well, yeah, but that's because of the rate that prices are increasing. So if that rate continues, appraisals aren't going to catch up to that rate. I mean, that's just two trailing numbers. They're both doing
The
this.
point is, if you just go back 30 to 60 days, more than likely, if there are houses that have closed, because some neighborhoods, there's nothing for sale. That makes it
Right.
hard. But I had 3 comps that sold and it averaged 560 versus the 6-month average was like 500.
See, and I had an appraiser that went back 6 months.
Yes.
And there were some
Such a
that were right
pain.
here, and so there was a $27,000 difference.
Yeah.
And the buyers ended up leaving, and I'm like, use the last 3 months. And you
Yeah.
got.
That's a just, in my opinion, that's a just because I'm not the appraiser. The appraiser does what he wants.
I know,
Yes.
And that's.
I had one again throughout more recent ones. And like those are anomalies
Does
in the
anybody
market.
here call the appraisers if they have the listings?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
And I ask them, do you want me to email an appraisal package or do you want me to leave it at the property? And sometimes I've got really nice appraisers and sometimes I've got like, oh, I can do my job. I don't need your comps. I'm like, oh,
But most of them
Yikes.
most of them that I lately have said, thank you. You know,
yeah.
we appreciate that. I had
haven't
one
gotten
that
it.
said no, and I was like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's important, I mean, it doesn't matter what side of the transaction you are. We have a responsibility to get as much information as we can to get the transaction to go through. That's our fiduciary responsibility for our clients. And calling the appraiser, calling the other agent, getting involved. One of the things that burns my chaps the most is when I get a non-communicative agent on the other side.
Oh, my God.
Doesn't take my calls, will only do texts and they're short sentence texts. Did you get this? Yep. Hello? You know, and so if you can be more communicative on talking to it, especially on multiple offers, then you know that you're gonna build a rapport with somebody saying, okay, this person's easy to work with, this person's asking good questions, this person's providing good information. Those are ups that you can give to somebody that's not that way. And I'm looking for any call the appraiser, you know, any opportunity that we can make this deal win, because they want to make the deal work too, right? And they don't want to get in and have it locked up and then lose the deal.
Right.
And I hate when somebody calls or sends back and goes, we chose you, but let me tell you, you weren't the highest one.
That's exactly.
Well, yes, we are, because you chose us.
Right.
You know, and it's not all about price, it's about how creative you can get it. It's like talking the cash deal versus being a 10,000 with a no waiver. You know, figure out how to be creative and how to be, you know, do we put in $20,000 in the option period? Do we do a $400,000 earnest? You know, and then when you do these things, just make sure you know your outs and how to get out and meet your deadlines.
Right.
Because in this market,
Yes.
people aren't going to be forgetting on a
Oh,
option
absolutely.
period.
Are you guys submitting proof of funds when you know that the house is not gonna appraise for what they're offering?
Yes,
Proof
I
of
have.
funds,
So
cash available?
on mine that
Yeah,
are
the difference for the waiver.
Yeah.
are mine that are doing that, I have their pre-approval sent and that same PDF, I have proof of funds. So it's all their financials are in that one. Yes, but that PDF is separate from their 1-4, which is separate from their third party, which is separate from the appraisal waiver.
Can you tell me what the proof of funds look like?
So there's two proof of funds that I usually use. One is gonna be some kind of statement, bank statement,
Yeah.
fidelity statement with their name,
And everything crossed out.
black out the account
Account.
numbers and all that stuff. And then second, I will get a letter from the bank that says they have sufficient funds to make up whatever they
Right.
make up for cash funds for it.
So we have a question on Zoom.
Yeah, call the bank, they'll write a letter. They're familiar with it.
Okay, perfect. We have a question on Zoom, and so this is from Mariana, talking about FHA and VA buyers. So raise your hand if you have an FHA or VA buyer that's having a really hard time getting under contract. It's really
Oh,
tough for
really
them
tough.
right now because they can't do the typical appraisal waiver. So Mariana's question is, how can we be more creative for those clients, but also, is there, Jane specifically, is there something, can we have an attorney draft something that has appropriate verbiage to be used basically for the appraisal waiver?
Yeah. There's 2 ways that I've seen these appraisal waivers done on FHA. The first way is what they do is they take the escape number, which is in the third party financing. The property has to appraise for X amount of dollars. Again, I'm just going to tell you, most FHA and VA people aren't 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 like we're seeing. They're 2,500, 5,000. So even over this price, even if you change some stuff, it's really hard for them to win because they're usually not, I mean, if they had $30,000 or $40,000, they wouldn't be going FHA.
Right.
They would be going conventional. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. But one of the ways that I have seen it is that they make that escape clause higher.
So make that the number.
So make that the number. Now, here's the caveat. You need to make sure the buyer's lender understands what's going on and that their underwriters are good with that. Because this is an FHA loan. It has to meet FHA guidelines. And if your lender and your underwriter are okay with that, I had one done with Willow Bend Mortgage and they said their underwriters are fine, but they know what they're trying to accomplish. And so that's okay. Then I've had other people come to me and say, no, the lender won't allow it. So you got to make sure you get the buyer's lender approval. Do you guys know what I mean about that escape number on the third party financing?
No.
Okay,
Yes.
FHA and VA. Okay. Now, if you read your third party financing, there's a number in there that the house has to appraise for. And usually that is the sales price. Okay, because FHA and VA guidelines is that it has to meet the appraisal, the sales price has to meet appraisal value. Now, FHA and VA guidelines also say that if it doesn't, the buyer and the seller can negotiate if that's what they want to do. But for primary purposes, it says basically, let's say the house is 300,000 and it appraises for 295, and in your contract, it says 300, the house didn't appraise. Okay, what we're doing is if it's, you have a 300 sales price and you put a, what's required is a 300 appraisal value. That's what's required. Okay. In other words, the sales price and the appraisal value should marry together. Now, if you put 275, that's different. Okay. But the issue is this, is that you already know approximately, because this is how you use the appraisal addendum, you should know approximately how much that property is worth. Okay, now there's some latitude in it, but if you know, if you're comping it out, the property's worth 310 and you're making a 340 offer, you already know that property's not going to appraise. So you can change that, your offer to 340 and then change the appraisal value to 310 on the form. Again, with the approval of the lender. Because they're the ones that have got to push it through underwriting. Because we don't ever talk to underwriters, but the loan officer can and most likely does. That's one way to do it.
Tell them the reason behind that, because what you don't want to do is lock up a contract with your client, knowing that that can't go through without talking to the lender.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
again, I'm just going to tell you, I already know, I'm a listing agent, Jeff's a listing agent, Don is a listing agent. You see that on an FHA contract, it's a red flag to you, right? It's a red flag. So you got to make sure that Donna doesn't have 400 offers on this house because she's not going to talk to you.
Right.
You know,
Well,
and
Donna's
just
still
make
nice.
sure you
She's
put it
nice.
in the email as best as you can. And I'm just going to tell you, if you get that many offers on it, your offer's not going to win. Again, most FHA, VA buyers don't have 40, 50,000 to put down. Otherwise, they wouldn't go that. Now, some VA buyers do. Because there's some things on VA that makes it very attractive, but most FHA buyers do not. There's a reason why they're going FHA. The second one is, like you said, is basically having an attorney draft a letter. Okay, to put into the special provisions. Now, attorneys can only draft this. Attorneys that work for the buyers, not the agent. Okay, there's a difference because they're representing the buyer, they're not representing the agent. So it's attorney on behalf of the buyer.
So we can't use title attorney.
You can, as long as they're working on behalf of the buyer, not working on behalf of Keller Williams or Jeff Wolf. They're working on behalf of the buyer. The
So how do you-
representations to the buyer, not to us.
But how do you distinguish that? You have it in the email saying that this.
Well, what I
The buyer would
usually-
be the one to pay the.
Yeah, what I
Yeah.
usually do is have the buyer send me an email, just a copy and a paste. My attorney has required that we put this on special provisions. Boom. Okay, great, thank you, no problem. Boom. My attorney, Jeff Wolf, told me, whatever. So that you know who the attorney that wrote it is, and then you just copy and paste and put it on your contract.
So that can just go straight into special provisions.
It can go into special provisions. It's written by an attorney, and only an attorney can change that contract. Now, I just got through this attorney or a principal, but you don't want your principal writing legal contractual language because they don't know how to do it. So make sure you get it from attorney.
Okay. What are some other, so I think maybe for FHA, I think Marianne is also wondering, what are some other creative things? So maybe with your FHA clients, maybe that's an opportunity to use that and maybe a higher option fee. And I think it's important to really look at what price point of property your FHA client is looking at, because some of those are going to be so much more competitive than others, and you are going to have to know that going into it. So any other things that you could do that anyone has done for maybe an FHA client that's gotten under contract recently?
I would write a super sappy letter.
Make people cry.
Yeah, I mean, I would, I got 15 kids.
They can wipe their tears with money.
Mariana, we can't hear you.
I said so they can wipe the tears away with all their money.
Yeah, the sellers are wiping it with, hundreds.
There's literally a meme where it's like the client has a dollar bill and he's like reading your client's letters like with a dollar bill.
With the previous option period that they took from someone.
$5,000.
Yeah, exactly.
But anything you can do, my point earlier being, anything you can do, more is better than not enough.
Absolutely.
And,
Pictures.
because everybody else is writing letters.
Careful with
You just gotta
pictures.
make yours, on the first time home buyers,
You gotta
first
be
time
careful
buyers,
with pictures.
worst time.
Yeah, see, and so myself as a listing agent, I give my sellers the option. I tell them, people are going to submit letters and pictures. My suggestion is you do not read any of those until you've accepted an offer. Otherwise, you're emotionally going to be swayed. If that's your preference, you can read them ahead of time if you're open to that. My professional opinion is you should wait until you're already under contract.
And one of the offers that we were going to put in said, please no letters, please.
Yeah.
No letters, no pictures.
People don't-
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people, if they've been in that home for a long time, they want to know those stories.
But if
So
you
I
put
do.
them all in one PDF.
Oh my God.
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, one.
Work hard on that one.
On pictures and letters. The National Association of Realtors is discouraging that.
Yes.
Because of the fact of potential discrimination.
Correct. And I think Houston MLS has already said that you cannot submit them.
Yeah, just be really,
It's only a matter of time.
careful with it, is all, especially as listing agents, okay? Because that's what the National Association of Realtors has been saying. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I have a truck complaint out against one of our agents. She is, I'll call him he, it's a he, she. Who knows? They waited, it was a multiple offer situation. They waited until the house closed and let's say the property closed for $550,000. Well, this complainant said that he bid $555,000. Okay, now usually this would not be an issue with Trek. Okay, the reason why it's not an issue with Trek because it's not about the numbers. It's about the best offer, like Jeff was saying. And when we wrote back our Trek response, we said, no, the 550 had a full appraisal waiver and the 555 had no appraisal waiver. And we told the client the house was only worth 530. Okay. And lo and behold, we also got them the appraisal from the buyer's agent with the approval of the buyer, because we told the buyer what's going on. And the appraisal came in at 530. So this was actually the better offer because the guy at the 555 could renegotiate with us.
The 555 guy sent it in, she's mine.
Okay, but here's the problem. Here's why Trek let it through. How do I say this? It's not a Chinese person, but let's say a Chinese person. They're Chinese by their name. So they made accusations that the buyer knew that they were
seller.
a racial ethnicity because of their name. So be careful when you have pictures. Okay? I mean,
Change their names too.
And-
No, you
and-
can't change your names, but just know that that's even more of an impact when you see pictures. Okay? So, and we just told them what the facts were, but that's the only reason, in my opinion, Trek let this one go through.
Well, again, I mean, I think letters, if you're mentioning anything that could be a protected class, which is why I give my
You could
clients
say,
the
"My
option.
Catholic church is right next door. This is why I want to be here.
I had a client, that wrote, I'm the
Really
first
careful.
LGBT paramedic in Fort Worth because he saw a rainbow flag in the house and he wanted to put that in. I was like, take that out of your letter. I don't want that associated with me. Take it out.
You gotta be very, really careful on what's being said on those letters.
Yeah.
That's why
So I guess
NAR
we need to
says
repeat
to
it
not
before
even do
before.
that.
Well, which is why, yeah, yes. You're sticking everything in one PDF and send, not reading it. Which is why I give my clients the option. So then if there's any sort of issue, my clients chose to do that or not, it puts the onus back on them. That's why I always do it via email. We'll have X, Y, and Z submitted.
That's a good point. I think doing all this is good information, because I think if you're starting to get really creative and you start trying to think really outside the box, you start getting yourself less protective. And that's what the TREC rules and these promulgated forms are here to protect both sides pretty much. And so when you're doing things outside of the norm, kind of takes your risk a little bit higher.
Yes.
And we need to be careful on, limiting our exposure as a real estate agent, as a brokerage, and the fiduciary responsibility to your client.
There are some things that people are doing. I'm sorry I was late today, but did you guys talk about the non-realty items? I think we talked about that. Where you're making an offer, the list price is 500. You're making an offer of 500, but you're buying their dining room set for $40,000.
Oh my
Heard of that?
No.
That's a good one.
No.
Where's Bill Webb? Bill Webb was looking at this.
Oh my
And so
God.
you're not worried about the appraisal, but guess what? The seller's gonna net $540,000.
But I thought lenders don't like that. Does the 40 have to be taken, the 40 is paid separately or no? I thought,
You can pay it outside.
So
of
we just had
closing,
this,
you pay
we just
inside of
had this
closing.
happen. We
but the
didn't-
financing amount is the
Oh my
500.
Again, it's a gray area, okay? But I've had people
Wow.
say that they've been successful doing this.
I do my non-realty for
What
like
did
$1.
you
I love that sweater. I'll pay $20,000 for that sweater.
Sure.
Right.
I'll
But
write it
here's
up
my
right now.
offer for 500 for your house. But again, I can't buy that sweater unless you take my $500. Yeah, there's a couple of things that's a benefit to doing it that way.
So it's
So
a
wait.
house at 500.
Exactly.
So the
One
list
way.
price is 500 and your financing amount would be based off of $500,000 list price.
But
Okay,
again,
I'm loving.
So that
for
40 would
me,
be
when I
cash
look
at closing.
It doesn't really show the value of the property.
But where do you
When
put
you
that?
close it out in MLS, you close it out at 500.
Okay, but where
Oh,
do you
I'm not
put
worried about
that?
that if my client gets it.
$40,000, you put it in a.
Non-realty item. Yeah.
Non-realty item. So let's,
And-
I like your sofa. I want to buy your sofa.
Yeah,
I know
lenders,
it's
I've had lenders that are like,
Some fancy.
That is the
highfalutin
darndest
$50,000
creative.
sofa.
Okay,
I would
sofas
never.
for 40,000.
That would be really great for like refrigerator, washers and dryers right now and furniture because you basically can't get any of those.
Wait,
Mariana's talking.
I don't know how, so.
Just
Oh,
on the computer, don't do it, just.
The volume is on, right?
Mariana's.
Oh, there you go.
It's okay.
Oh, there
I
you
was
go.
gonna, can you hear me?
yeah.
I was just saying that would be great for like refrigerators, washers, dryers, any furniture, because right now you just can't get any of those for like months. So
Yeah,
to be able to, they're gonna pay, $3,000 for those things anyways. They might as well get something out of it.
But again, that has to be your client that has the extra cash to bring,
Yes,
Correct?
that would be
Yeah.
the client that would have the extra cash. The other thing
not your
that I just
FHA,
did-
Mariana.
So that's one of the things that I've seen.
Well, all mine are VAs, which they've got the cash. That's the thing is they have money,
Okay.
but they want to
So that
take
would be-
advantage of their VA.
Right, so that could be helpful
Yeah.
for your VA clients, then write that refrigerator in for.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of checks and balances for someone saying that refrigerator is not worth 20,000 to make sure that,
I've
Is
never
there-
had anyone, has anyone ever done a non-realty items addendum and someone said it's not working? Now, on FHA, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be zero.
The lender will come back, you get online and come back and say,
Wait.
What's the value of that? Because we're not.
I thought it-
Even if you're bringing it as cash.
I thought a non-realty addendum always had to have at least $1 for it to be considered.
No,
I don't think FHA allows for that.
I've had zero.
Oh.
For washer and dryer.
I mean, I have
Because-
two, but I was told that I did it wrong. It pushed through, but I was
Again,
told for it to be,
that's
what is it called that you're giving?
At each
And they don't
change.
Yeah.
want that financing because it's, I'm lending amount of money on an asset that this person's paying $40,000 extra on. Now, it might change, I don't know. And the guy goes, hey, I got $40,000 extra cash. Here's, I'm gonna bring this. This is how we're working the offer. And they got it approved from the lender and the underwriter. So previous, before the feeding
Right.
frenzy that we're in now, is what I've been calling it.
It's a nice way to say.
A
it.
lot of lenders
Piranhas out there.
will want
Piranha
things
realtors.
not in non-realty items addendum because they don't know what the actual value is. And they don't want major repairs on there because then they get lenient on, you need to have the foundation fixed before closing.
Your loan officer usually will be pretty honest with you.
Mhm.
I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
I
I'm
don't see it.
thinking. They don't need
Just
to see
don't put it in.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, that's up to them. There's another, I just did another deal. I bought a tear down, not me personally, but I bought, I wish it was me. I bought a tear down in Preston Hollow. 0 days on the market, listed for 1.6 million.
Tear down?
0 days on the market. 4 offers. The Keller Williams. agent. 0 days on the market. So I said, oh my gosh, my client really likes James. I'm sorry, I got 4 offers on it. Okay. Do you do cash offers? Yeah, some of them are cash. Of course, I knew they were going to be cash. But it's a lot of value. And so
Builders.
I went back, the builders, and I went back to my client and I said, look, can you pay cash for this lot? He said, I can pay cash for it, but I don't want to. Well, why don't you? Because I want to put it into my construction loan. Okay, I understand that. But you do have cash to pay for it just in case something happens. He goes, yes. Is your bank, because he had to go through bank, because this is a lot. You don't go to Fannie and Freddie buying lots, okay? And so I said, is your bank going to be okay if we remove the financing contingency? Well, what do you mean by that, James? I said, we're just going to take the third-party financing out. We're going to disclose it on the contract that you're going to, you put $500,000 down, and then you're going to get financing for X amount of dollars, whatever it is. And then you're going to be higher than sales price because you have 4 offers you're competing with. So he bid like 100 or 150 higher than sales price, and we took the financing contingency or the financing third party out totally, because I had approval from my client to do that, because I told my client, if you don't get this loan, you're either going to be default of contract, you're going to lose your earnest money, which at this point was very substantial because we wanted to be in first position. Or you're gonna have to come in and pay cash for it if the bank can't do it, because my bank will do it. But if they can't, will you pay cash for it? He said, yes, great. Now I'm gonna take the third party financing out. Do I have your approval? He said, yes, you do. I want this house, or I want this property. I said, okay, great. So I called the realtor and I said, hey, this is just as good as cash. This is why he wants to do it. He wants to put the realtor understood, wants to put this construction loan so that he can, get the construction loan based on there, and if he needs to pay down more, he will, but he doesn't want to pay all cash for it. We want to do it.
But that's being creative. I mean, you got to
Right.
think outside the box on, what makes the same bottom pocket to the seller with the same amount of risk or less.
And since you don't have a third party contingency on it, you don't need an appraisal waiver.
Yeah, there's no appraisal.
There's no appraisal.
So did you just get something from his bank to show?
Oh, yeah, I just got a free
Like all
quality.
that stuff and just, okay.
And I told my client, the bank's still gonna require to have an appraisal, so if you are less than that, you might have to bring, he said, I don't care, as long as I don't have to bring the whole,
Wow.
$1.7 million in cash, I'm okay with it. That's okay.
Me too.
Are y'all writing multiple offers at the same time?
That was gonna be one of my
Last
questions.
Sunday, I wrote 3 offers for one client, 2 offers for another, 1.
You're on the Maggie Dieter train.
So
Yes.
So let's talk about that. So that in the
No.
past, we were always discouraged of writing
Yeah,
multiple offers
absolutely.
for the same client.
But we're in a different game now,
I
don't
know
you
it,
think?
I know it. But what happens if you write, I can tell when a buyer's agent sends me multiple offer, that they're doing multiple offers, because it's the same, it's sloppy, there's nothing signed on the other
No,
side.
everything's-
It's a phishing offer. So how do we handle that if your client wins all 5 offers?
They pay option and get out of 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I think you have to explain that, because I've done the same
I
thing.
told my client.
Tell them, Mike, you're going to be out of option on, best case scenario, you win one of these, worst case, you win multiple, and you're going to pay option on 2 of them, 3 of them.
And no, the option fees are not $100.
Well, I mean, again.
No, I know, but
We don't have $100 10 days.
So what we do is my client on the favorite one, on their favorite, we do the higher option and earnest on that one. On the others, we do highest earnest or high earnest, still 3%, but we do a more reasonable option. It's still not low like what I'm used to writing, but it's lower than the one that's their favorite. So our most aggressive offer is going to the primary one. I haven't done it for 3, but I've definitely done it on 2 properties at once.
Hey, James, what do you think about a no option period? You okay with that?
Yeah, here's the thing, because I've heard a lot of no option periods. My preference when you do a no option period is to have an HOA. The second easiest way to get out of the contract, other than the option period, is the HOA addendum.
That's wrong.
What's the second easiest way?
No, because I just went through that. before the feeding frenzy of the HOA, and they used the HOA, they were past the HOA, they already had all their docs in that they didn't receive the docs because they never responded and said we need to receive them. But I had documentation from their assistant saying that they received them. So they were using that as the HOA, you can get out using the HOA docs
Yeah.
after the 3 days after receiving them.
Yeah.
Right? This was past this.
If it's past the 3 days, then that's,
No,
when you put 0, okay, I'm gonna give you the best case scenario.
Okay, I'll
You have
get
a
to work.
seller that's prepared and that's ready. You have a listing agent that has prepared the seller to get the HOA docs the minute they execute that contract. But how many days do you have after the execution?
3
date of
days.
the contract? 3 days, the minute they, let's say you, May 1st, he gives it, the HOA docs to you May 1st, you really have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, May 4th as quote unquote a termination period.
That's right.
Now, if you're a bad, if that agent's really that good, you need to be really careful. That agent knows what they're doing. So you need to watch your dates because he's trying to close that HOA date on you. Okay? Does that make sense? So
So is it 5 o'clock like the option, or is it up to 11:59?
I would just plan at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was planning 5. In my opinion, if it's not specified, it's 11:59. But I wouldn't wait for that.
Yeah.
If they know that they're not gonna want the house, let's say you did on May 2nd, you did the inspection and it was just like, we're not gonna accept it, unless it's an as is, you're just not gonna accept it, I would go ahead and just send it.
What about the other place where there's 3 days for the survey and all those other docs? It's still another out there.
No, it's not out.
Survey's not an hour.
It's
No,
not out.
it just swaps to the other party paying for it.
Well, it depends on how you have, depends on how you have it written in the contract.
Well, yeah,
If it's a
typically,
contract, it's
yeah.
247. But the thing that you also have to remember is that there's nothing in the contract that says the seller gets the earnest money from the buyer.
Not anymore.
Never was. Ever since I
Oh,
know.
no,
There's only one way a seller can get out of the contract. Anybody know what one way contractually a seller can get out of a
If
contract?
they're not.
Default.
The buyer's in default.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that is, but there's actually one other way. But that's a little different because that's a little vague. If the buyers are in default, the seller can get out of the contract. There are certain things the sellers have to do. There's one seller's right to terminate in the contract. No, it has to do with earnest money, delivery of earnest money.
Oh, it's late.
Yeah.
There's only one way. If the delivery of the earnest money is not within the 3 days, on the 4th day, whoever comes in first, meaning whether the seller brings in his termination of the contract or whether the buyer brings in his earnest money, whoever comes first is going to win. So if the seller comes in at 8 a.m. or 12:01 a.m. and emails it to the title company with the date and stamp on it and says, we want this contract terminated, it's a seller's termination, he does another form.
Mhm.
Send it to the send it to the title company at 12:01 on the 4th day. You beat out, because that buyer is not going to be, unless he wire transferred it and it showed 11:59 the day before, which is a possibility, but I don't put much hope on that.
Right.
So if your seller wants to get out of it because she's got another offer that's $30,000 or more, as long as 12:01 on the 4th day, more than likely that seller has terminated that contract. But that's the only place where a seller can terminate. Now, the buyer can be in default and the seller can terminate, but sellers have to have certain procedures to terminate. Just like when we close, it's supposed to close on May 15th. It doesn't close. Does that mean the contract terminates on May 16th? No. The seller has to do certain things to ensure the buyer's performance. He has to give them what they call a cure period. So whether that cure period is, hey, this is a demand letter stating that you did not close per the contract on the 15th. You have 7 days from today's date of this letter to close the contract. Otherwise, this contract will automatically terminate. So there's a cure period the seller has to do, but not on the earnest money.
But that's what I'm talking about, the cure period under paragraph 5, under objections, D.
But
I don't
So
know.
we're usually put residential use, you put residential
I don't
use.
put anything, residential use is not the proper term to put in there.
Well, whatever, anything that's there.
Well, we're talking contracts now. Let's talk more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think his point
No,
is,
that's enough. That's very important. 2 things, that's important. And then on the HOA disclosures, if they check box 4, the bottom one, does that mean there's not an out on the HOA docs because they don't.
Define box
require
4 because there's a lot of new agents. So
Yeah, I don't know what box 4 is. Because I usually don't check box 4. What's box 4?
One says that you don't require delivery of the HOA docs.
No, then
So
you
if
don't.
require
If you don't
delivery, now you
provide
don't have
this-
to-
no,
Yeah.
what- if you're doing a 0 option period, why would you check that box off? As a buyer's agent? I would scold you as a buyer's
So I'm
agent.
saying that if you're
Going,
looking at an
"What?"
offer coming across, you're the listing agent,
Uh-huh.
an offer comes across, HOA docs, box 4 is checked, that means they're not gonna use that as an out.
Correct.
It's the way I
They
take it.
can't.
They can't,
Yeah.
They've
because there's no
already-
delivery, because
So
the
they-
termination is because, yeah, but if you're a buyer's agent and you're putting a 0-day option period, why would you check box 4 off?
yeah, we're talking about offers from the buyer side.
Because you're representing the buyer. And you're saying, hey, let's do this, because most agents are focused on this option period. But there are other things in the contract that can get you determined, can give you the termination right.
And you can put a longer HOA delivery fee. You can put 10 days, 3-day option, 1-day option, no option, 10-day HOA. So title usually orders the HOA docs. They're gonna go based on those 10 days. And if they send those 10 days out and they go, okay, well, we got 10 days to get these to the buyer, then you can use that as your addition. Says, okay, we got 3 more days after this, so really, within 72 hours, to terminate if you want to, once you get them delivered.
Right.
And that's the out that the buyer.
That's
has.
right.
My point was that
That's the
originally,
easiest way, other than the option period.
on the earnest money, a lot of sellers still think if the buyer's in default, they automatically get the earnest money. And there's nothing, I know, but a lot of sellers, we're agents, we know this. But it's our goal, I'm telling sellers up front now, you will not automatically get this earnest money. You have to provide information and the reasoning to get the earnest money, and the other party still has to sign off on it. Good title companies are not automatically delivering earnest monies. They will say, we will not deliver this earnest money until the buyer approves and says, we're gonna sign off on it. We just went through this, client closed, another real estate agent was the buyer. She closed, bailed the day before closing, bought the unit next door to us, right? So I knew it came on market, it went real quick. I was going, so she wants out, she used the HOA docs, that wasn't deliverable. I had it all timestamped, sent it to her, had some attorney's emails on there just to make it look official that we're gonna head us around. And I told my client, I said, okay, do we want to take her to court for the $2,500? And it's gonna cost you about $6,000 to take her to court, or you want to figure this out? We ended up splitting the earnest money. Now she's a black box and checking my contacts. But you gotta make sure that you tell, when you're doing these really creative deals, tell your clients, both sides, this is not with your expectation, this is the expectations you need to have going into this.
One of the things I think we weren't here in the beginning is we talked about having no option period is actually less creative.
Well, I heard Hunter say
Okay,
that,
perfect.
but Bill was saying in Jan that they didn't like that no option thing. the other
Which
day.
is why they were saying instead, write a more aggressive earnest money. I mean, option fee. It's because option, they're definitely, as a buyer's agent, if you're writing a more aggressive option fee, then that's better than no option period.
So what about 0 days on the option and a $3,000 fee?
Why would you have a
would have
fee if you had no
fee,
option?
it'd be zero.
You'd have no option fee if you had no
You
option
get the-
period.
You get the money back anyway. Sellers can't get.
You have
Yeah,
to have
but
an
you-
option
you
period,
have
you
to
have to have at
have
least one
option.
day to have money on it. You can't do a 0-day, $3,000.
I did a 1-day option.
Yeah, both go together.
Wait, oh, I already have the
Yeah,
inspector.
same.
I already have the inspector
As
lined
I'm
up.
as I'm submitting offers, I'm texting my inspector saying, hey, I've got this, we're gonna have a short option period, which day can you come
Now,
out?
that's a good question. So let me ask you this. If we get directive from our clients to market the contract, can we do that?
If you have
The
what?
seller or your principal can mark up the contract.
Okay.
You cannot.
That's
What
right.
do you
Your
need,
principal.
for what?
So if I have a seller, they go, I don't like this legal stuff in here. I'm gonna take this out
God.
and mark on
Your
this.
principal can, he's a principal of the contract, he can change that contract. You're not a principal of the contract,
He
you
can
cannot
change
change it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a principal to the contract.
Signing it as a contract, yeah.
I
It's his
think
contract.
Mariana also had a question about HOA.
Yeah, I was going off, I think Greg asked about it with box number 4. I was going to ask the same thing. And James, you said, why would you do that if you don't have an option period? But if the buyer's willing to risk that or wants to do that too, it's just eliminating one of the ways for them to back out of the contract, just like an appraisal clause, right?
Absolutely. If the buyer wants to do it that way, they understand,
Right.
the pros and cons of doing it that way, that's totally their decision.
Okay, but by checking box number 4, because I asked this because I had it on the listing side happen where they checked box number 4 that they didn't that they didn't require the delivery of it says delivery of the subdivision information. Even though we still have an HOA, so we have to do the resale certificate and everything, it was just one of the ways it eliminated their out.
That's correct. For a listing agent, that would be something you would look for, but for a buyer's
Right.
agent, again, that would be up to the buyer, as long as the buyer knew what the ramifications were of doing that.
But yeah, and then I was thinking, okay, to make some of my offers stronger, I might talk to them about that here's the risk, just like waiving your appraisal, there's a risk with that as well, that obviously they could lose their earnest money or just taking away one of the ways they could back out of the contract.
So Mariana, maybe you can answer this. So box 4, it just says that the HOA information is not required to be delivered to the buyer, but lender still gets that information. Lender still
Right.
title. I mean, because title orders it, but doesn't the lender require to see that? Or
No, I don't think so.
Well, all it says
I'm
is
when they're
it
required
literally
to.
just says buyer does not require
condos for
delivery
sure.
of the subdivision
Not
information.
regulatory, not
Okay.
formal.
So like they don't require it to close, but they're gonna get it still. You have to
Okay.
have a resale certificate.
that's why, that's
Okay.
what I was thinking, is like that portion it's still required.
Yeah, but I think for James' point, I think it's beneficial for the seller, for the buyer to click on check box number 4, but for the buyer, I think you're just eliminating your risk. You just need to let them know that's a risk that they're taking. But I think the original thought process is that most agents are going to be focused on the option period and not on the HOA side. So that might give you an out on your buyer if it needs to happen. And that would be something that I would probably put on the low priorities if they were still iffy and wanted to do, a small option period.
And I
Right,
also
but if
think go ahead.
I was gonna say, but if we're trying to find creative ways to like stand out from other offers, like it definitely was one of the first that I had seen on the seller side, and we had like 26 offers. So it was something I was kind of like, that's new that I haven't seen. Just like I haven't seen the option money be credited back to the buyer or to not be credited back to the buyer. I haven't ever seen that until I got this offer, and they were doing all that like non-normal offer, and my clients loved it. I mean, obviously the price was great and other things, but
Yeah.
Substantial level.
And I do think that if that's a box that you check on that addendum, you need to make sure that you explain that
Oh,
either in your email or the call to a listing agent, because I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even necessarily look at it. If you've got 35 offers, you're going to assume, or you can't rely on the agent to not assume, I guess is what I'm saying. So make sure if it's a key point like that, add that to your email list when you explain things.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is know what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Giving the option money to the sellers and the buyers aren't getting it back.
Right. If it's a substantial amount.
And they're, and
No, where it's credited
To
back.
give the option.
Yeah. That box is gone in the new
oh,
contract.
yeah, that's right. It is.
Okay.
Can that be added to special provisions?
You can add that in special provisions. Contract of the contract, if the buyer.
Paragraph 11.
And that's not considered,
Buyer does not need the-
that's not considered,
At funding and closing, the buyer does not need a option money credit to discount fact, they want credit to the seller.
so we could write that in and
Just
not
write that
get in
in.
trouble for,
Wow.
so.
Okay.
Because that's what you guys got to remember, a lot of this stuff is coming from your client,
Right.
quote unquote. One of the things I see, I'm just gonna make a general statement, has nothing to do with this. Don't say, when agents get into a fight, they make it personal. Always put yourselves in arm's length distance away. It's not about Jeff's an idiot. Jeff's client is the idiot. Does that make sense, you guys? So that Jeff's not fighting with his agent. It's like, no, man, it's not me. My client said to put it this way on the contract. My client said to give you back the option money. We don't want it. Once we close, the $3,000 is the seller's. That's what my client said. It's not what Jeff Wolf said. Just keep remembering that diction, you guys. It's not about you and the other agent. It's about the buyer and the seller. Always talk about them in the third party, because that's what they are. They're parties to the contract, not you.
That kills more deals
Oh,
Anything else?
What did you present? I don't need to present this to my client, or, yeah, he'll text you 1 minute later and says, we're not doing it. Oh, did you talk to, I don't need to. Even if that's the case, say, my client said he's not willing to do this. Okay, what's your client willing to do? I don't know. Let me go find out.
Ready?
He's willing to do nothing. Okay. I mean, don't make it sound like it's you who's making the decision. Always make it sound like there's another party, and there is. They're the parties making the decision. You're supposed to communicate with them.
Like we're gonna buy back in. Run like
So again, just an aside.
40 to 45 cents. And then hopefully it goes up.
And I'm trying, it won't, it hovers over. I can't click it.
700. Yeah. You should
Oh, well. We'll just have to hear it in the background for just a second. Okay.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I like that HOA one. And I like knowing that we can put that in special provisions for option fee. I think that's really good.
But that's a good one that Mariana talked about was putting no option fee box that you don't pay back.
Oh, and really fast, Mariana, can you talk about really that one thing that I wanted to talk about, the non-escalation clause, basically, via email, how that happened? We talked about
Yeah, I
escalation
think-
clauses earlier, but
It's kind of like what James said earlier, where I got an offer that had an escalation clause, like he had an attorney drafted or whatever. And I even told him we can't do escalation clauses, but he still wanted to do it. Basically, they gave us a full price offer. We had multiple offers. They said they paid 500 over the highest offer up to, it was like 326. So I just, when I presented it to my client, I mean, I told him, it's an escalation clause. We really can't do this, but I'm gonna just assume that this offers to 326, basically at that point. Because we did have offers even higher than the 236. We ended up going with theirs for other reasons. Just because they were willing to guarantee more over appraisal, things like that. So we did go to it, but instead of keeping it as an escalation, I just did a, what's it called? My gosh.
addendum
We just
amendment.
negotiated back or counter offered. Yeah, counter offered at 236. So we had, or 326. We had them change the sales price basically.
Awesome.
Can you write in there, since there's not an option box in there, can you not put in special provisions that it'll automatically be given back a title?
Yeah, he said that.
No, you can put that in there.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, instead of the option money being returned to the buyer at funding and closing, the option money shall be returned to the seller.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
And I wrote that in for Zoom, like what you wrote. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Read that one.
Yeah. It just says contrary to the contract, option fee will not be credited back to the buyer at the time of closing. That's what you said, basically.
Yeah,
Wait,
well, actually
contrary-
it specifically should be returned to the seller.
Okay.
بابا بشوي
Everyone
بابا
hopefully.
بتتعامل مع
Everyone
الحاجة
heard
بطريقة
that.
متخلفة.
No.
You know it's loose.
Hey, Dahlia, you're not on Zoom, or you're not on mute.
It's not a Zoom unless somebody's unmuted.
Okay. All right. Well, everyone on Zoom, do anyone have any last questions as we finish up?
It was awesome. Thank you.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Jim.